Hey guys, welcome to the Dreadcutter podcast.
If you want to know how to blast your opponent down to zero authority, come check us out.
Woo!
Woo!
All right, now we're going to talk about using explorers, pros and cons, why you should, why you shouldn't. Pat, what are your thoughts on explorers, man?
Yeah, explorers are, I think, are very underrated. A lot of people will say, look at them and be like, they're not as good as some of the actual legit trade row cards, right? But there are instances when you need to use them. There are also instances where you actually have to buy them because you won't have enough trade to get 5, 6. So there's a lot of times where there's 5, 6, 7 card that you just can't get without getting explorers, So they're very good conduit. Like there are some games where I just get them because here's the thing. Like sometimes I don't know what I want to buy on the trade row, and so maybe a first good turn would be just to fly an explorer and see what your opponent does first. It's a very neutral thing. It's like in poker when you
It's when you check, right?
when you check, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's better for you just to see what your opponent, because you might buy a card and then your opponent knows exactly what to do to counter you right away. And so you negate that advantage by buying Explorer because it's trade and you can scrap the damage and it becomes weightless, You could just like play it and it gives you an advantage. And so that's really my first thought is it's underrated card, but I think it's a very solid first or second turn buy. And also it's great if you need to supplement trade at a certain point early to mid game. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I also think it's a nice like supplementary damage card too. It's nice that it scraps and that it gets rid of itself. And cards that scrap themselves, I think, are really good cards and are also very underrated as cards. And the nice part about buying explorers, especially on turn 1 or turn 2, is it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't give away your strategy. It doesn't commit you to any one thing. If turn 1 you buy a blob, turn 2 you buy a blob, your opponent immediately goes, he's going aggro, time to counter it. I'm going to buy some bases and healing. I'm going to get efficient or whatever. They can already formulate a counter strategy. Whereas if you buy explorers, you're not really committing to anything yet. So now you can be like, all right, what's my opponent doing? Oh, he bought a couple of blobs. Boom, I got him. Now I'm going to counter him, and now he's shut down.
Yeah.
And because they scrap themselves, they allow you to realize the strategy that you have or the counter strategy that you're trying to do, either one. And then you get rid of the explorers, you deal nice damage. Now your deck shrinks. And now your deck all of a sudden becomes very efficient.
Yeah, it's a great way to get trade without actually paying the price of bloating your deck, Although it bloats it for a second, it's a lot less. It's a lot less than if you get an actual trade card, which you actually have to get a scrapper, So that's the advantage. So that it's a very nice neutral choice. There are no real cons to it, Like it's really just a nice solid card, to get, and something that most beginners should actually consider buying more times than not as some of their first turns,
Yeah. Like as much as I love the cutter, it's literally my background.
Yeah.
In the late game, cutters become kind of lame.
Yeah.
They just, especially if they don't combo, they're just weight and bloat and a little bit of healing. Whereas explorers scrap themselves, so they never have to. If they when they bloat your deck, it's only for one turn. You can always get rid of them later. And that's the nice part about explorers is it's just like you're not really committed to them at any point. At most you're committed to them for one turn. Sometimes you want to keep them around for another turn or two, especially if there's a lot of big cards out there. That's a good time to keep explorers around. But for the most part, at least for myself, I'm very much an advocate of if you buy an explorer, you're also scrapping it as soon as you play it.
Yeah, because remember there was one game where I bought 7 explorers like to start. I ended up getting like 2 7 cards. I want 7 and 8. And so at that point I was like, I'm gonna keep all my explorers because I feel like there's all these big cards I want to keep on accruing. With the lack of a 3 or 4 trade cost card. Obviously, if you get a freighter, then you're gonna scrap all your scouts. I mean, I'll scrap all of the explorers out. But I think for now, if you really just need that extra boost in trade, and sometimes mid game it would be good mid game to be like, I need one more trade to get this mech cruiser or something like that, I'm gonna get an explorer because there's no other trade on the field. Like, and I feel like I have a little potential for that, especially if you have a draw deck. You can draw into that a little easier. So yeah, the explorer's just solid buy. I have nothing. There's really no cons to it for me. Like
Yeah,
it's
right.
solid.
Like it's
early
like
to
having 2 scouts and 2 vipers in one card.
yeah, early to mid. It's like it's a great buy.
Now, what about late game?
I've never bought late game. Explorers.
Why not?
I just never have.
Because they
it's
suck.
very rare because even having
suck
like
late game.
a swarmer which is like 3, like that's a 1 cost card. I'd rather pick that up than a explorer. I've never like if we're talking about turn 20 on, like I don't really buy explorers. So that's just my take on it, because I feel like there's better effects, and if I'm trying to out damage your opponent, there might be a rare specific instance where I'm like, I just need that one more trade and there's no trade on the field, then maybe I'll buy it. So not like I maybe have it, it's just that 99% of the time I don't buy it late game.
Yeah. So what ends up happening is your deck starts accumulating cards that are significantly better than explorers, and the need for trade starts to go down because you've already built the deck. I don't need to add anything more to the deck, or I already have enough trade to buy anything that I want, so getting an explorer isn't really worth it. So then the bloating that it does is actually detrimental to your deck, because now you're drawing an explorer when you should be drawing a blob alpha.
Like weightedness becomes even more crucial at the end stages of the game.
Yeah. As the game goes on, you want your weight to go down as much as possible.
And this will add like just enough to maybe make your deck. I mean, sorry, your explorer will maybe just add enough to actually make your deck inefficient enough where your opponent gets that opening.
Yeah. You may draw an explorer and deal 2 damage, great, but you potentially could have drawn a card that dealt 6 damage, and that could have been the difference. Maybe that's a base that you don't kill. Maybe that's a turn that your opponent should be dead and he's not, and he comes back and he kills you. So the drawbacks to explorers grow as the game goes on. But in the beginning, they're very beneficial. They're very efficient, especially compared to your starters. It's like having 2 scouts and 2 vipers in one card. That's awesome in the early game. That's pretty good in the mid game. Eventually, though, once you start hitting late game, you're going to want to either not buy them, and you also are going to want to scrap them out of your deck as soon as possible. So that way you can get to other better cards.
And there are some 1 or 2 drops that are just way better than Explorer in the late game. For example, like Swarmer would do 5 damage and it's a 1 cost,
Right.
And that's a card. So like that's just a huge late game. If we're talking about like just dinky cards, that 5 damage combo adds up over time, Whereas Explorer, they do just 2 damage, and you have to scrap it. So like it goes like the curve goes like, oh yeah, it's great like early game, and then it just completely like bottoms, like
it craters really fast at a certain point. Like wouldn't you rather have a battle pod over an explorer?
That'll be consistent. That'll go like this.
Right. Like this always does the same thing, but what it does is really good.
It's a consistent.
And you're gonna want this over an explorer a lot of the time. But if this isn't out there and you can't afford anything in the early game, an explorer is a really nice buy.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it. Like I would say explorers are good, very good early, okay in the middle game. They suck in the late game. So you always gotta remember, have I done enough with my deck to where explorers suck? Fine, I'm just never gonna buy them.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Totally agree.
Okay. Let's talk about self-scrapping cards for 10 minutes and we'll be done.
Yeah, cool.
Do you know how much total time we have right now?
I don't know the total time, but don't worry about it. You can also figure it out.
I should be able to get 4 episodes out of this, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Even if some of them aren't half an hour, it'll be fine.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. And now we're going to talk about self-scrapping cards, which are cards I love. I love them so much. And the reason I love them so much is because they initially do their job, and then when they're done with their job, they get the hell out of the way, making way for your better cards to come through. So, an example of a card that I think is very, very good that scraps itself are these two right here, Stellar Reef and Cargo Pod. These are really great cards. They come in, they give you trade, they give you damage, then they scrap themselves for more damage when you don't need them anymore. Awesome. So they allow you to get bigger cards, they allow you to get more efficient cards, and then they get rid of themselves. So what's really great about that is your deck becomes twice as efficient. You effectively upgrade a card. You go from, I have a card that gives me 3 trade and a little bit of damage, and then I upgrade it into Blob Alpha, and it's gone, and then I get rid of that card, and now I've got a Blob Alpha in my deck, and I don't have a Cargo Pod anymore. I don't have a Stellar Reef anymore. So now I'm drawing into that Blob Alpha that much faster.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Like it's there's lots of cards, and if we were to talk about like the curve again, like it already has a good effect, so it's gonna give you a little like boost. But when you scrap it, its effect becomes like this, like boom, like it gives you that little extra bit, which could be the difference between winning and losing. You know, it could be the difference between your deck turning into a more efficient, effective deck and not. You know, an example of that would be like, well, okay, I have a bunch of cards that we can talk about, but Protocol is a really cool card, and that's one of those self-scrappers, right?
There you go. Yeah.
So it's like 3, so it does a really great effect. It's a base that does 3 damage. I mean, sorry, 3 trade. So it gives you that amazing effect right away. And then when you scrap it, like it not only protects you, but then when you are able to scrap it, it draws a card and then destroys target base. So it basically it runs its whole port into your ass, basically. Like and you might draw into
Remember me!
Exactly. It's a kamikaze base.
It's a kamikaze base, I know.
And so the great thing about this is that not only is a base, but it also becomes like a you know, it gets a weightless effect on it, you know, because it draws into another card, you know, and I love those kinds of cards because they just give you that little extra oomph, you know. Some other cards we have that are our favorites, like we got Survey Ship right here as another self-scrapper. Really great when you're trying to do a 5-card Exodia, you know, like, you know, discard deck.
Sometimes it gives you that 5th.
Sometimes it gives you that 5th card, and this is beautiful, you know. So I know you're a fan of these amazing, like, multifaceted, like 3-cost cards, right? And that Survey Ship is definitely one of those. Another one is like, you know, one of our bays, you know, like Warkite.
Warkite, yes.
Which basically is a base destroyer, you know. It's basically those kamikaze pilots in World War II that just
like
run
a
into
double base destroyer, right?
Yeah. Basically, it basically runs into one ship and then it kamikazes itself as a flaming fireball into another ship. That's what it does.
It's one base and it smashes it into another base.
Yes. And that's beautiful. And I'm also really a fan of the trade ones, you know, like a bioformer or a space station, which is our bay, you know, in the vanilla
bay.
You'll hear us referring to a lot of bays, you know. They're not our girlfriends. They're just like
bases, bays, BAEs, because we love them so much. Put a ring on that shit.
Exactly. We will sleep with those cards, but
me and Bioformer, you're slimy and you got tentacles, but I love them.
And then when we have a good time with them, we just scrap them and leave, you know.
Get rid of them. Kick them out of bed.
I'm out of here.
Get out of here, bitch.
Get out of here.
Swarm clusters coming home.
Not that we're that type of people, but just like, you see what we mean. We're just like, we love cards that just do an effect and then give us an extra effect when we scrap them. That could be the difference between, you know, winning and losing. Yeah.
Because the thing is, once you scrap those cards when you don't need them anymore, they're not draws that happen later on. You know, the last thing you want to do is your opponent has 12 health, you've got 10 damage, and then that last draw is a stupid card that you could have scrapped and gotten rid of before, that now is preventing you from winning. And that's the thing. These cards typically are very good early, but once their use happens, you want to get rid of them so that way you can draw into the big card that you upgraded to. So one card that I think is really good in that instance is Gunship, which is, oh boy, sexy.
It's a mother.
It's so nice. Like, 5 damage, target discard, right? Great. If you're building a yellow deck, this is awesome. This is a great part of it. But if you want to use this card to then get the Emperor's Dreadnought and then put that into your hand, oh my god, it's so good. So not only you get rid of this card, you upgrade it, you put that card in your hand, and now your deck is way better.
It's like
way better.
It's like the Emperor's Dreadnought's butler, basically.
Yeah, this is the harbinger of the Emperor's Dreadnought, you know. The Emperor's Dreadnought is like a lost puppy, and this is like the owner, like Dreadnought, where are you? Oh, there you are! Oh, come home! Bam! But it turns out the lost puppy is actually a dragon. You're just like
that eats him before that eats him, basically.
That eats people, yeah.
Yeah.
Or something like Repair Bot. You know, this is a nice one. Gives you 2 trade when you need it. Allies red. Scraps a card in your discard pile, but then when you're done, get rid of it. It's like an explorer, but that scraps. It's awesome.
I don't know how many times where it's just like, oh, I have so many scrapper cards in my deck, I want to get rid of them, but I have to wait a turn to scrap itself, basically, you know?
Yeah, right?
Or just have another card come in and scrap the scrapper. Like, I don't know how many times that's been a problem, you know?
Exactly. This is why a card like Trade Bot is kind of bad. Like, it makes your deck efficient, yes, but it only gives you 1 trade, and you very quickly you want to get rid of it.
That's why it's a 1, you know?
That's why it's a 1. Yeah, and this is why a card like Probot is a 2. Gives you that trade, allies to give you that card draw, but then if you need 3 more damage to kill that base or kill your opponent, it does that too. Right? Gets out of the way. And even you know, my secret Blue Bay trade raft is fantastic. 1 trade, allies to draw a card, so it's already potentially weightless. But then if you want to get rid of it, and get a second trade, you can do that too. So sometimes it gives you 2 trade and gets rid of itself, or gives you a card draw and 2 trade and gets rid of itself.
Yes.
Oh, value.
Way better than its ugly cousin, the Skeef.
It's significantly better than the Skeef.
The Skeef is, I would argue, is like the worst card in the game. You know.
No, it's not.
I would argue it though.
Bed Shuttle is the worst card in the game.
I think you can make an argument for both. You know, like
Skeef draws. Can't be that bad.
No, it draws on the blue deck, man.
Only in a blue deck though. Yeah, I know.
I think they're both pretty bad. Okay, so we can make an argument.
Agreed. Neither one of them is that good, but
exactly. But anyways, so yeah, like what else?
You know, and a lot of times if you're thinking about buying cards on the trade row and you're trying to decide between 2 different cards, if one of them self-scraps, a lot of times you want to lean towards buying that one because you'll be able to make your deck very efficient later on once it's done its job. Whereas if you bought a similar cost card that didn't scrap itself, now you have to figure out a way to get rid of that later. You know, and that can be a problem, you know? And then you'll end up drawing it 2 times when you don't want to draw it, and you're just like, oh, fuck, why? Get out of here. We don't like you anymore. Like, you need to leave, you know?
Exactly, you know, like it's just and that's a lot what a lot of beginner players would overlook. Definitely is like, oh, this card has more damage, but it's bloated, you know, or this card has more trade, but it's bloated, you know, like and sometimes when you see that, you have to think about like, well, is this deck going to help me in the long run? Because most likely you're going to be stuck with it until the late game, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Versus like, hey, you know what, I just need its effect and its powers just for a short time. I'm going to buy that scrapper card, you know, that allows me to get that effect and that I don't have to worry about it later game, you know? Because there's a lot of cards where just like, we could make like the shitless podcast, you know, or whatever. Or like we can have like a spin-off where it's just like, this is the card that we hate to see late game, like always, like a separate
Shit on Cards podcast.
Shit.
It's coming. No guarantees.
No guarantees. The dread shitter.
Dread shitter. This card sucks.
Exactly.
This card sucks.
What are the cards that you hate to see in the last last 2 rounds? I mean, last 2 turns. Like
Reef sucks.
Keef in a yellow deck. Like what the
fuck out of here! I know. Why are you here? Ugh.
I don't know how many.
Like that annoying guy at the party. You're just like, just fucking leave. Nobody likes you. Why are you overstaying your welcome? Like, you were fine in the beginning, but now you're drunk and throwing up everywhere. Just leave.
Yeah. Skeef, like Imperial, like fighter, like I don't know what other like
Trade bot. Yeah.
Yeah, leave.
Or,
You're not part of this party anymore.
get out of here.
Uh,
What's that other one? Trade hauler. This one. Oh boy. This guy's a stinker after a while. Just get the hell out of here.
like the guy
Free
that
trade, yay.
first impression, he's like,
Don't even-
yeah, I'm a cool car.
I know, you're just like, you're like,
After a
oh, I
while,
love
like,
this
I'm
guy.
drunk.
He's so nice. And then after a while, you're like, oh, he has a dogfighting ring. Ah, that's bad. Or you're like, he's kind of racist. Like, just go. I thought you were cool at first, but you served your purpose, all right? We had
he's
one
drunk
good conversation, and now you need to go.
They're just having too much partying in the hauler's fridge, basically. And they're
Right?
all drunk.
Yeah.
You know?
You know, look. Peacekeeper's coming over, okay? Trade hauler, you need to leave. You need to leave.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Yeah, we'll end it.
All right, cool. Amazing. Oh,
That was good. That was really good. We got a lot of stuff, and
Yeah.
it's going to take me a little while to edit all of these, but I'd say we have at least 3 episodes out of this. Hopefully 4.
I think you can stretch it to 4, probably. Yeah, you can have the 4.
It depends, because there's a lot of stuff I'm going to have to edit out, too. So
Yeah, you'll see. Yeah, just work it out.
we'll see. I won't know until I edit. I won't know until I get in the booth.
Yeah.
But, dude, thank you so much. Thank you for carving out time, and I'm glad we got to do this.
Yeah, me too, man. Let's definitely talk about also the Happy Habits podcast and how we can start that too.
Sure.
It would be kind of, well, I'm trying to
Talk to
think.
me later, man. I know you got your call, man.
Yeah, I got my call in a couple minutes, so we'll talk about that. Yeah, it was fun. Thank you so much. I'll catch you later, bro.
Lots of hearts, lots of love, man.
Yeah, too.
Guys, thank you so much for listening and watching the Dreadcutter podcast.
Thank you for scrapping your way through our podcast. We really appreciate you spending our time just chilling with our geekiness over here.
Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.